I never thought my mind could become, on one side, so peaceful and calm and settled, and then on the other side, so focused, creative, and dynamic. To have both of those opposing things, I never thought it was possible. I think some of us are just so overstressed that we just become immune to it. We just become used to living at this level of stress where we can't sleep, our head is on a swivel. You know, I'm not able, something that should take me 5 minutes is taking me 15 because my mind is constantly anxious and stressed.
What if you turn hardship into greatness, anger into serenity? Everything changes. Make your life a masterpiece. Spencer Delisle is the president of the Art of Living Foundation Canada and joins me now to discuss the art of living, what it really takes to live a life truly worth living, and so much more. Welcome, Spencer Delisle, to the show. It's such a honor
Thank
and
you so
pleasure
much,
to have
Yannick.
you.
And really, knowledge and living a life in knowledge and wisdom is such a blessing and a gift, and it makes life so juicy. So, thank you for bringing many people to wisdom and creating this great space. Happy to be here.
Just to start, first and foremost, introduce yourself in simply one powerful sentence.
My job is to introduce you to yourself.
That's beautiful. I think that's a lifelong journey. That's huge, and I love what you're doing. Really, as I just said, because really life is an art of really getting it right, and probably it takes a lifetime to really get closer to it. But to really give our listeners and viewers some context, tell us about your youth and what led you eventually to study and to become engaged in the Art of Living Foundation Canada, that ultimately, you how
That's
you
right.
met Sri Ravi Shankar and so on and so forth, so that we get a taste of who you truly
You know,
are.
whether if you're asleep, whether you're in a prison or a palace, you can't tell the difference. And I think I was sleeping for many years, as many of us are in the sense that, we just go about our routine. And I got to a point in my life where, yeah, life just didn't have so much juice in it anymore. I was asking myself a lot of these questions. Is really my life just to get up in the morning and be at work the whole day? I had interesting work. I was working for McGill. We have that connection. And then, coming home, seeing my family for a few hours, and then going to bed and doing the same thing again and again. And I think that, once someone has that moment of awakening to wanting to get out of this bondage that we're in, and what I mean by that is these habit patterns that we get stuck in, getting stuck in anger, getting stuck in reeling in anxiety, not being able to get out of this vacillating mind. And I think that, once you get an opportunity and you feel, wow, I'm tired of this, which maybe some of your listeners are feeling. And I feel there's more to my human potential than just this kind of rat racing mind. Then it opens up an opportunity. And for me, it happened to be in Montreal. I had gone back to school, and I saw a poster for meditation. So I attended a meditation, and that ended up in me experiencing the Art of Living Part 1 course and the Sudarshan Kriya, which is a very powerful rhythmic breathing technique that was cognized by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar about 45 years ago. And it's just had a remarkable effect on my state of mind. Like, I never thought my mind could become, on one side, so peaceful and calm and settled, and then on the other side, so focused, creative, and dynamic. To have both of those opposing things, I never thought it was possible. And it just brought the juice out of the present moment of my life. And after that course, I ended up having an opportunity to meet Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. And everything I felt in the Kriya, the Sudarshan Kriya, I felt in meeting him without even taking one breath. Someone that is embodied in this wisdom, someone that is living in the present moment, an enlightened master. And it was just the teacher, I had been looking for to guide me in learning about the mind, the nervous system, and the emotions, not just from an academic or from an intellectual standpoint, but from an experiential standpoint. And of course, both have a lot of value. But just like as you would learn piano or you would take any course from a professor, having some guidance on the nature of our consciousness, the complexity of this life, both the physical and the manifest and the ethereal, needs some type of guidance. So being able to find someone that's living in that state, 24/7 was a true gift. And that started a journey which, I became a teacher, started teaching in my, spare time. I would mix test tubes in the laboratory and for my job during the day and try not to burn the place down. And then on the weekends and in the evenings, I would teach the courses. And then Gurudev, one day, he said, "Oh, it looks like you really love this. Would you like to, take a sabbatical from work?" And I ended up taking a week off from work to do this in Europe. And that was 18 years ago. And I haven't kind of looked back since. My story is unique in a sense because we have not so many full-time teachers with the foundation. Many of our teachers are actually part-time. They have their family, they have their job, and then they teach on their own. But for me, it's been a full-time pursuit, and it's a life of learning. It's been incredible.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and congratulations. Really, that is quite something, and also like juggling, your life and really your job, and then with these courses, that's quite something. That's amazing, and it's also not very surprising that it happened to, actually in Montreal, because it's a beautiful, really inspiring place. Good for you. So happy, you know. So how does meditation, specifically what you laid out, really influence you on an experiential level? So just when you do it and after,
Yeah,
before and
that's a great
after, what does
question,
it do?
because I think most people, when they hear meditation, they hear, okay, I have to be silent and my mind has to be calm. Well, that's not for me because that is the opposite of how I feel in this moment. And in fact, we have a corporate program that we teach through our corporate organization called the Transformational Leadership for Excellent Institute. And I remember teaching with one of the top energy companies and technology companies in the world. And one of those executives came up and said that you want to take away my stress, and my stress has made me the success I am today. So I don't want to do your course. I said, okay, fair enough. It's, free society. You can do as you like. And he ended up sitting on the course. I asked him after the first day why he stayed. And he was a fairly young man. He was in his early 40s. I think he was 42. And he had had a heart attack. And the doctor gave him two choices. Choice one, you can quit this multinational company. Choice two is there's you get your gravestone ready because this is the direction you're going. And he had a little girl at home, and so he said, okay, I decided to do neither, and I'm taking your course to address the issue. And we stayed in touch, and really wonderful to see how his health improved. His blood pressure went down, his cortisol levels were much more manageable. And the interesting thing is that whereas before he was driving towards burnout, now, and his mind was kind of on overdrive, now he had that beautiful combination I was talking about where he was settled and centered, calm, even in triggering situations, but then had a tremendous energy and a tremendous creativity and brilliance that was coming, with new ideas, and was able to really lead his team in a brand new way. So to get around to your question, meditation is really simply being able to connect with the essence of who you are. And what is that? Is that, that angry person that you may feel you are, or the anxious person you feel you are? No, it's connecting with that essence, that peace, that joy, that enthusiasm, creativity that is within all of us. Like if you think about it, a baby doesn't need a reason to smile, but try to get a smile out of your teenager. Good luck, or an adult, right? I mean, it's so rare that we smile. So that's it, and that is the true wealth. Of course, being able to be more focused, being able to have, more creative ideas, being able to have an exuberant energy that you maybe have not have felt in years. These are all really great things. But being able to be truly happy from within and have a smile, an unshakable smile, that is the true success. And that is what these practices of meditation can give you.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really love that. So tell me a little bit of what it actually takes for people to join, for example, a course with you, because it's always like there's a certain barrier, right, to really do it ultimately, and afterwards you're looking back and it was life changing. But really, to get to this point, what does it usually really
That's
take?
a great
What's
that's a
your
great question,
experience?
Yannick. And I would say is that most of the society, most of us, we're we've become very unnatural, you know? And I think meditation is just getting back to our natural state. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. So being able to eventually, maybe you want to start off slow, you want to do a few guided meditations. I mean, the founder of the Art of Living has a number of guided meditations, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar on YouTube, and so does the Art of Living Foundation. So you can test out any of those. But if it turns out that, okay, I'm ready to take a step and learn some practices for my life, establishing a daily practice that you can use that just takes a few minutes a day can can make a big difference. And as an introductory level, I would say for people to come join our Art of Living Part 1 course. It's a 3-day course, 3 hours a day, 3 consecutive days. You can do it online or in person at any of our centers around the world, um, at your convenience. And then you have this very powerful practice that you can kind of use wherever you want, whenever you want. And ideally, we can see how we can make some time for that every day. A few minutes a day can go a long way. We think nothing of dental hygiene. Most of us brush our teeth, once a week, hopefully a little more. and but what do we do about our mental hygiene? I mean, for most of us, it's just not even a question. we're just not at all taking care of ourselves. And we would think nothing of doing nothing for our mental hygiene our whole life. You service the car, I don't know what it is, every 50,000 kilometers or whatever it is, but how many thousands of kilometers have we been going with our mind our whole life? So that's the thing, neither at home nor at school do we learn how to manage our mind and emotions. And Art of Living is really the school for that. So someone starting the introductory program, learning the Sudarshan Kriya, practicing on a daily basis. And then, of course, there are other programs. We have the Sahaj Samadhi meditation program. So Sudarshan Kriya essentially is a purification technique. It allows you to release all these stresses and traumas from the system. And then once you've done that, it's kind of like wiping the mirror clean. And Sahaj Samadhi meditation, typically the next course people take, is looking in the mirror and experiencing that deeper level of meditation. So, and of course, we have silent meditation retreats we do around the world and at our meditation centers. Like, for example, I live at our meditation center in Quebec, but we have one in Boone, North Carolina. We have a beautiful center we have a center in Washington, D.C., and all around the world. So you can take your pick. But being able to establish yourself in that primary practice is a great way to do it. Or we also do, as I was saying, corporate programs. So we teach in corporations through the TLEX Institute, corporations and government. We have another foundation. It's called the International Association for Human Values. It's our sister organization that teaches in institutions. So, for example, all the courses we do with police, with veterans, with active military as well. All those programs, the programs we do in schools. So we now teach this in the schools, whether it's Sky Schools for elementary and high school, Sky Campus at universities. We're on a mission to make, this a stress-free, violence-free world. So it's a big goal. So we are really reaching out to all areas of society, and we want to join hands with everyone to make sure this incredible knowledge can reach as many people as possible.
That's amazing. Give us a taste of what you mean by stress, right? Stress is a word that we use, but give us like a clear definition and why it is important that we actually address it, especially when it comes to our hygiene in terms
that's
of
a great
our
question,
mental
Yannick.
hygiene.
And I think some of us are just so overstressed that we just become immune to it. We just become used to living at this level of stress where we can't sleep, our head is on a swivel. I'm not able, something that should take me 5 minutes is taking me 15 because my mind is constantly anxious and stressed about something. And very simple definition of stress is too much to do, too little time, and not enough tools to manage that stress. So stress, in a sense, there's a great Yerkson and Dodson did a study in the early 1900s where they looked at performance and stress levels. Those were the two, the X and the Y on the graph. And what they saw was it was kind of like a bell graph. So in the beginning, little or no stress was not so good because people got bored, they were uninspired. Then if you go more and more stress up to, like, there was a peak level of stress, a kind of a sweet spot, so to speak, where you were enthused, you were inspired, you were motivated, you were driven. And then once you got past that point, you got into a point of being, overburdened. You got to the point even of burnout, and then it can even go further along on that continuum. So seeing how we can regulate stress is a really important part, and stress essentially is very useful too. I mean, our nervous system has been designed for it. Back in the day when we saw a stressor, say a lion chasing us or something like that, well, stress was an incredible way to, really tap into the amygdala and the fight or flight response. So it can get you running before you've even realized that there's a danger there intellectually, or with your in the cerebral cortex, your amygdala is already firing off and getting you running. Now the problem is that we're no longer living in that, forest jungle environment, at least for most of us, but still those levels of stress are having the same effect on us. And effectively what happens is that when the cerebral cortex, our seat right here in the brain of that higher intellectual reasoning, creativity, decision making, when the stress levels are too high, the cortisol actually blocks neural communication in the cerebral cortex. So what does that mean? The neurons can't communicate. And if they can't communicate, effectively your wizard brain, your cerebral cortex, shuts down, and the lizard brain, or the amygdala, fires up. And that's when we get those reactive, behavior. Rather than a response, it's a reaction, an emotional reaction. But the beauty of it is that if we know how to tune into our autonomic nervous system, we can actually tap into that system. Through doing that, principally one of the great ways to do it is through the breath, through the vagus nerve. There's a very powerful breath called the Ujjayi breath, which taps directly into the vagus nerve. And this nerve actually decreases the level of cortisol in the brain, kind of reboots that wizard brain, and allows us to have a very quick response time, but coming from a centered and a calm space rather than an emotional kind of reactive space. So stress is useful in our life, but it takes a skill to be able to manage that for our benefit and for the benefit of others around us. I often say I do my meditation so I'm not as much of a headache for my family and my colleagues.
Exactly. No, that's fantastic. I really appreciate your explanation. Now, the problem is exactly you lay out, right? A lot of people are stressed, let alone, and we will actually go into that a little bit later now with AI and all these changes. They're so fast paced, right? So it's really hard. Now, my question is, if people are so stressed, and now you come and say, well, it might be good if you do some meditation and so on. So it's already very hard for them to actually, like, really think that a little bit through, that it might be actually beneficial for them. So lay us, what can do someone, for example, who is really stressed and who still has somehow some barriers to actually join a course like you, to commit, let's say, a 3 days program, to really start, get going and to do some positive changes. So what is the number one barrier that people face in order to enroll to such a
that's a great question. I mean, one thing I would say for those people that are looking for a start to help manage their stress, looking at their levels of energy, I think is an important thing to do. Often we're running on empty and we don't even think anything of it. I say, okay, I don't have time to raise my level of energy, but if I'm running out of gas, I won't say I don't have time to get gas, in my car or to charge my car, whatever. Maybe you have an electric vehicle. I don't say I don't have time. I need to do it, so I go do it. So having that same, level of self-care that we have for everyone around us, not only will benefit us, it will benefit everyone around us. So, if we look at, there's many different ways we can increase our energy, but we usually talk about 4 powerful ways. One is the food we eat. So looking at your diet, are you eating a diet that's really giving you nutrition, or are you eating just to fill your stomach or somehow get through the day? And when we start eating much more fresh foods with not so many chemicals, eliminating the 3 sisters, the white sugar, the white salt, and the white flour, we're eating whole foods. This will increase our level of energy, and and enable us to also help manage our stress. Second one is sleep. How much sleep are we getting? And just like the first one, quality and quantity are important. With the food, we want good quality food, and we want a good quantity, a reasonable amount, not too much, not too little. Same with sleep. What is the quality? What is the quantity? I remember in one of the programs we did with Sudarshan Kriya, we do one program for the veterans. It's called Project Welcome Home Troops. We were doing a research study um, in partnership with Western University and the Schulich School of Medicine. And we had a participant that was sharing that in his 10 years after coming back from deployment from Afghanistan, the longest he had slept was 4 hours. So the longest he had slept in 10 years is 4 hours. So, you can imagine the level of stress, and, effectively his head was on a swivel, and he was hyper vigilant. And it's interesting because this hyper vigilant that kept him alive on the battlefield now was tearing him apart at home. And it was interesting because even after the first experience of this rhythmic breathing, he actually came back the next day and was angry at us, in the sense, tongue-in-cheek angry. He said, listen, I'm angry with you guys. I almost missed my dentist appointment because of you, because last night I slept 10 hours. So it's incredible. The last day of the course, we've had, spouses, like his spouse came on the last day and said, thank you for giving me my husband back. Because being overstressed, it's not our natural tendency. We're not meant to be overreactive and in such high levels of anxiety and stress all the time. So being able to sleep is also very important, and that was a big change for him as well as a lot of people that take our program. The third one is the breath. Where would we be without our breath? Well, we're not getting too far. If I say, okay, I'm going to stop breathing today, I'm going to take a break, I'll start again on the weekend. Good luck with that, right? And so breath is an incredibly powerful tool, and really neither at home nor at school have we learned how to manage our mind, and the breath is a powerful tool to bring the mind to the present moment, as it is in the present moment at all times. And the third one is meditation. And meditation, you could also say a calm, peaceful, happy, state of mind. This can also be very energizing. For some people, it may be listening to a very inspiring speaker. You feel energized. Could be, maybe going for a swim in the lake or taking a walk or, what have you. Could be meditating, but that meditative state of mind where you're just completely taking in the present moment and you're almost in that state of flow. That's what meditation gives. And actually the breath can be a very powerful tool for opening up that fourth source of energy. So that's four things that you could do. You could start off simply on YouTube by learning a few breathing techniques. And if you like, we could even do a technique together for your listeners if it's of interest, and you could have a direct impact and see what you think.
Let's do this. That's
Okay, cool.
fantastic. I
Let's do
love
it.
that. Let's do
So
it.
this breath is called straw breath. And straw breath, the benefit of straw breath is that it helps calm your nervous system down. So what are we doing? We're having an effect on the autonomic nervous system, particularly on the parasympathetic nervous system. So we're clicking into the rest and digest system. And what we're going to be doing is this one helps if you're a little anxious before a meeting or before an important conversation, or maybe you find your mind is racing for some reason, or you get triggered in a discussion or in a board meeting. And so this breath can be a very powerful way for helping to self-regulate yourself. So what you do is you're going to breathe in through the nose, And then breathe out through the mouth through pursed lips like you're breathing out through a straw, like this. And very slow out breath. So breathe in through the nose once again. Slowly out through the pursed lips like you're breathing out through a straw. Once again, breathe in through the nose. And out through the mouth, through the pursed lips, like you're breathing out of a straw. If you like, you can even close the eyes. We'll do a couple more. Last one. And with the eyes closed, the attention inside, or the gaze softened, let's just take a moment to observe any sensations in the body and the state of the mind. And let's breathe in once again. And as you breathe out, slowly, gradually, we can open the eyes. How was that?
Great, really, really nice. It really has an effect.
Nice. So
It's pretty
typically,
amazing.
we do at least 9 breaths with this one. We only did a few, but even in that short period, you can feel a little more clarity. You can feel this nervous system calming down. And it's a very practical kind of ad hoc technique you can do in a, typical kind of crisis situation, or, when you need it most. But you could even add it to a daily practice. Maybe you have and do it on a more consistent basis. And we've seen that this breathing technique, it brings calm, brings centeredness. It also increases focus as well. So there you go. It's a nice way to start your journey, and then of course there's deeper dive techniques like the Sudarshan Kriya, and a number of other preparatory breathing techniques that we teach on the Art of Living Part 1 course.
Why do you think it is actually more powerful if you do it in a community, for example, if you really join?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a difference. So lay out why it might be
Oh, it's a great
or
question.
why not? I don't know.
So, if I think it's becoming more and more clear that we live in a world that is both material and ethereal. You could say gross and subtle. So, for example, this phone. This phone has a gross aspect, a material aspect, which is the case, which is the screen, all the hardware. And there is also a subtle aspect to this phone as well. What would that be? Well, the signal, the Wi-Fi, the software, And I remember, you speak to my grandfather back in the day, and he would say, "Oh, if I can't see it, if I can't touch it and feel it, it doesn't exist." Well, I mean, now, we know from the world we live in that, that's not so much the case. It was for some aspects of life, but that's only one part of life. We are the same way. We have both a gross aspect and we have a subtle aspect. So the gross aspect is our brain, our nervous system, our circulatory system, all these physical, material aspects of ourselves. We also have a subtle system. We have an energetic system in the you could say the Vedic system that Art of Living derives a lot of its techniques and wisdom from. They talk about the pranic system, which is this flow of energy through the system, through the nadis. You may have heard of chakras, these different energy centers, these crossings of these nadis. The in the other Asian traditions, you talk about the qi and the meridians, So for many thousands of years, there's been a knowledge of these different systems, but they've been largely for the last, 100 years kind of separated. And it's really now that medicine is really bringing in, both of these systems into play. And, just like anything becomes stronger, when you have a higher, degree of resonance, and when you have, more of these different, objects or what have you resonating in the same way, when you have people coming together, and you have those different energies converging, just like you remember from high school, when the two peaks converge, what happens? It doubles the peak. So you have an even greater effect. So when we're getting the benefits of, you're decreasing the cortisol, increasing the lymphocytes, increasing the body's immune system response, we have increase in prolactin, the well-being hormone. So on the physical level, all these positive aspects are happening. But then on the energetic level, increase in energy, increase in clarity of mind. And just as you said, we have a daily practice that we teach people to do, but then we have a group practice that we come and experience together once a week. And there's strength in numbers. I mean, every 5 years, we have what's called the World Culture Festival. And the first one we had in Bangalore, and we had about 2.5 million people come, a little backyard party, no big deal. And then the next one we had in Berlin, we had it at the Berlin Olympic Stadium, and we kind of just completely changed the narrative there. This is where, some of those grand speeches from Hitler took place, pre and during the Second World War. And so we flipped the script, and this is suddenly a time of celebrating diversity and peace and joy. 70,000 people came. The next one we did was in Delhi on the banks of the Yamuna. We had 3.75 million people come, 36,000 artists. We had one of the world's largest meditations take place, and there was almost 4 million people that came. 3.75 million people attended. And then the latest one we did was in Washington, D.C. We had over 1 million people on the National Mall, and we had one of the largest meditations in all of North America. 17,000 artists, 85 food trucks from around the world. And the message is simple, Art of Living, we exist to make to help everyone realize and get back to the reality that we're a one world family. And hey, we may look different, we may eat different food, but we are one humanity. And let's celebrate life. Let's celebrate our differences rather than having them divide us. So this sort of cultural Olympics where you have music and dance and poetry and speeches from all around the world, and meditation and breathing and yoga that happens together, it's an energy like no other. I can't explain it to you, that the upliftment that you feel when you come together with people with similar vibrations, so to speak, is just absolutely remarkable. And we feel very happy and honored that the World Culture Festival will be coming to Canada. We've won the bid in Canada for the World Culture Festival in 2027, and we're really excited to bring it to the world, and hoping that you and all your listeners can come join us to celebrate. Thank you.
That's amazing. Congratulations. No wonder with such a stellar, president, really, really awesome. Now, one of the question is always is that it's so successful, it really works as you laid out. Why don't more people join and practice it in order to really decrease all the different diseases, the stresses, the depression, that's all
That's a great
us.
question. I think I ask myself that question every day. I think one thing is that it's just, at least at the moment, it's not so well known. I think people have their traditional ways of managing stress. And perhaps, I know it was my case back in the day, I just didn't know anything outside of, going to see my doctor, really, and anything the doctor would recommend, what other type of, training or therapy or what have you. And really, this wisdom, that just happens to come from India. India has a very rich tradition in Vedic wisdom where this is rooted. The founder of the organization, Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, he's from there. He started the organization there so many years ago. Just because this came from India, I really feel that all the knowledge of the world is yours. The knowledge of the world belongs to you. And no matter where it comes, if it's going to help us and it's going to benefit us, why don't we take advantage of it? I think of, my cell phone. It's designed in California and made in China. Well, I'm neither Californian nor am I Chinese. However, I benefit greatly from it. Maybe a little too much if you ask my wife on the phone and on our email and everything. But in the same thing, I love Italian food, but I'm not Italian. I don't have any Italian descendancy. But that's the thing, right? No matter where something of value comes from, if it can be useful to us, we should just grab it with both hands and go for it. And I think now it's very interesting. On one side, social media and all of those types of medias out there have brought us together. Like, for instance, look at the technology is bringing us together. We're in two different places, and you're reaching a huge audience of people internationally. And this is made possible because of this technology. And then on the other side, this technology, it's not like back in the day where if you were to call somebody and they didn't have an answering machine, well, that just meant that they weren't there. And you would just have to wait for however amount of time until they called you back or you call them again. Now if you miss a text or a WhatsApp message or you don't respond to an email within a few minutes, then wow, there can be consequences to that. So we live in this little bit more distracted society, and I think that's become the norm to be unnatural. And maybe I think some people are so caught up in just being able to survive that we've maybe even lost that idea that, okay, maybe there's something more and I can really thrive in my life. And that's our goal. And I think that's part of the reason that, we're having this conversation. We've been brought together today is to see how we can reach more people, to see how we can share with people that, hey, life doesn't just have to be some rat race, but life can really be a celebration. And it, there's so many avenues now that you can connect with yourself and really give yourself that opportunity to be selfish about your self-care. I think many of us are running around taking care of our family, our colleagues, our work, our clients, but one person is getting left out. And that's a very important person. And so I really hope that, through our conversation and, the work that we're all doing, that we can really, give people kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, that it is possible and they can dip their toes into this and see how it could benefit them and their family.
On a personal note, how do you manage all these distractions? What do you do specifically? Walk us through really a day of yours and to really lay out a little bit how it actually
Yeah,
is.
sure. Thank you. Well, I think for me, this practice has become a morning practice. So I'll wake up in the morning and, I'll have my shower, I'll wash the outer body, and then I'll do my practice, washing the inner self. and cleansing all the stress and all these things and kind of preparing myself for the day. So I'll do some yoga asanas, great way for stretching and strengthening the body. Then I'll do my preparatory breathing techniques. Some are for calm, some are for energizing. After that, I'll do the Sudarshan Kriya, the rhythmic breathing technique. I'll go right into my Sahaj Samadhi meditation. And then after that, I'm actually off to the gym. I really love exercising and moving the body, so that's important to me. And then, yeah, basically, I'm ready to have breakfast, and then I've got about a half an hour before I start my day to look over, the different meetings I'm having and maybe some thoughts that I've had that have come up in the morning. Then I kind of hop into my day, and I'm having meetings. I'm meeting with people online and in person, doing calls on the phone, meeting with our different teams. I'm also teaching programs. So, I teach the corporate program. I teach our general public programs, as well as some of our institutional programs. I'm on the phone a lot, as I shared with our teams and our teachers, trying to keep a pulse on everything that's going on. And yeah, taking time as well, particularly to eat well and meditate well. I meditate twice a day. It's interesting. I remember Gandhi. He was being interviewed by a reporter, and the reporter knew that he also meditated twice a day. And the reporter said, "Well, you're one of the busiest people on the planet. How do you take time twice to meditate? That just doesn't make sense. You could use that time much better otherwise." And the reporter said, "Okay, well, what do you do on those days where you don't even have time to eat?" And he says, "Well, on those days when I'm that busy, the busiest," he says, "those days I make an exception. I meditate 3 times a day." So, it's the same for me too, is that the meditation, you might be thinking, "Oh, it's taking up another 20 minutes," but it's an investment. It brings your mind so much to the present moment that instead of something that should take you 5 minutes, or, it takes you two. Instead of taking a day, it takes you, a few hours. The mind is so present, so much energy and creativity, that investment that you did for those 20 minutes is actually giving you back hours during the day. So for me now, I tend to meditate at lunch, just before my lunch. But sometimes for one reason or another, there's too many things going on. I'm not able to do that. So I do it before dinner. Uh, and then typically I'll come back after dinner. I'll spend some time with my wife, and then and luckily enough, we both are teachers, so we're often talking about the work we do. And then in the evening, I'll wrap up with some more calls, or maybe I'll have an event to go to or a course to teach, and then I'll go to bed. For me, sleeping is also important. So for me, 7 hours of sleep is necessary. Um, and what I've noticed is that for some people, they need more and some people need less. But I've definitely noticed that being able to have those two powerful forms of rest, meditation, as well as sleep, means a lot. And then there you go. It's a different day every day. And those practices are really kind of the engine, what keeps me so enthused and fresh, throughout the day.
What's by and large your biggest challenges that you face on
Mm.
a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I would say, the first challenge that comes to mind is seeing how we can reach more people. That, I think, is the main challenge. We've developed a really great marketing team, and we're working on that, not only in Canada, but there's in the US as well as around the world. So looking at ways that we can reach people, through social media, through in-person events. But I feel the time is flying so quickly, and there's so many people that still have not been able to have this opportunity to connect with. And after benefiting so much, this is one of the main things that made me want to do this full time, is that I felt such a benefit from doing this that I felt guilty. I mean, maybe guilty isn't the right word, but I felt so grateful that I wanted to share it with as many people as possible. And as happy as I am that more and more people are becoming aware of the Art of Living and TLEX Institute and IHV, I know there's many more that we haven't reached yet. So I think that's the one thing that stays in my mind is often the last thought before I go to sleep, and sometimes the first thought when I wake up is, how can we as an organization, we have an incredible executive team that we work with, incredible, creative, intelligent people. How can we as an executive team in our whole foundation, we have remarkable teachers across the country and across the world. How can we work together to make sure that, no one's left behind? Because I know the before and after of how my life was, and I just don't feel that anyone should have to live in that way. And especially when they have this great treasure within them. So for me, yeah, that would be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Tell us a little bit more about why you think now it's the best time to actually really embark on such a journey, given all the developments, technological advancement. It's just stunning, and
Yes.
it's also very worrisome, obviously, and because we have actually some professor at University of Montreal, right, who is really at the very forefront of AI, and the concerns that he shares with many others. So give us a little bit your thoughts on this
Yeah,
whole
it's
development.
interesting. I mean, I think like everything, there's concerns and there's also great opportunity. Both both exist there. And we need to walk cautiously, and we need to take those concerns very seriously. And then at the same time, we know that there is something about the humanity that cannot be replaced by a computer, the consciousness, so to speak, of being human. And in fact, we're exploring a different kind of AI. We have our own institute that we've launched a couple years ago called the Institute of Absolute Intelligence. And this is an institute that is delving into the incredible capacity of the human consciousness. So when you're able to refine the nervous system, when you're able to become truly calm from within, when you're able to accept yourself as you are, with all of your pros and cons and all of these things, and you can truly accept yourself as you are, and settle that feverishness, always to be more and always to want more. When we can calm these cravings and aversion, and we get established in the self. And being established in the self, anything is possible. It's remarkable. And I would encourage, anyone who's interested in learning more about this. It's instituteofai.ai. And there's a beautiful course that we have, and it's called the intuition process. So this course, at least at the moment for now, it's for kids only, 5 to 18, I believe. And what we're doing is we're tapping into the kids' intuition. So this is one thing AI cannot you know, copy. You know, there's no intuition with AI, but a human's intuition is possible. You know, being able to step beyond the rational mind, beyond the intellect, to a deeper level of knowing and connection in the self. And these kids, it's incredible. Like, not only does their focus and confidence come way up, and their memory improves, all these things, but it's remarkable what they're able to do. I mean, you know, the course is not designed for this, but it's a way to demonstrate the power of the consciousness. You know, they can read with a blindfold, not braille, normal books. You know, there's even aspects of telekinesis in some of the courses. And I mean, the things sound completely, you know, from like a sci-fi novel, but the proof is in the pudding. I mean, there's many videos online demonstrating how these kids are able to, you know, really release these incredible abilities that they have within themselves. In fact, there are some of these kids that are helping the police to find missing persons because of that level of seeing and connection. And it's not only something we know of people in society that have these gifts, they're just born with these gifts. This is one thing that can happen. But through Gurudev, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, he's been teaching this. And now he's trained many teachers to teach this around the world. And we have research that's going into seeing how we can explore, you know, the science of consciousness and how this is possible. And yeah, there's an interesting documentary that's going to be coming out in the next few years, demonstrating and documenting this journey of these teachers and this process and these kids. And it's an incredible ability that's within all of us. And it's something that, you know, a computer program cannot replicate. So to answer your question, you know, we need to tread carefully, and at the same time, you know, being able to double down in those things that makes us human and explore, you know, that kind of infinite realm that lies within us.
Beautiful. Lastly, what makes you feel
Wow.
truly alive?
I would say connecting to myself. When I connect to myself, I feel a connection with everyone and everything around me. I have this experience where I don't even feel my body actually. I feel a sense of peace, joy, love, and tremendous enthusiasm, creativity, where this experience that I have in meditation sitting down is more and more becoming the experience I have with my eyes open instead of just when I have my eyes closed, where I see mistakes that people make and mistakes that I make, and I have compassion for them. Okay, that's from a lack of awareness. Okay, that's from a lack of understanding for others or for myself, which enables me to be free. I don't have, I don't hate anyone or have someone caught reeling in my mind the whole day because of something unconscious that they did to me or to someone else. I'm able to accept that person as they are and let go. Of course, I have my own behavior depending on who I'm speaking with, and you know, you're not a doormat. But the beautiful thing about being able to live in that meditative state more and more is that you accept so easily, accept the situation as it is, so you can take rational, creative, intuitive action. So rather than non-acceptance and resisting everything, more and more I find myself in a state of being able to, okay, this is the way it is in this moment, for better or for worse, whether I like it or not, this is the way it is, to accept that and then being able to dynamically, respond from a place of centeredness, love and peace and enthusiasm and creativity. And, that is a gift that I didn't know existed before. There's an incredible, really nice story I like about this beggar that was begging his entire life. And he passed away. And they were clearing the ground under where he was sitting. And what did they find? A huge treasure, just overflowing with gold and diamonds. And so his whole life, he sat on this incredible wealth beneath him. And he lived like a beggar his whole life. And in many ways, it's very similar to our own lives. We have this tremendous wisdom within us, this tremendous knowledge, this tremendous being that we are. But for most of us, or many of us, we live our lives without even touching or having, very much of a glimpse of this, let alone diving deep into it. So I think that that's what lights me up, is to know that, wow, I found this secret and I'm not keeping it a secret. I'm sharing it as much as I can. And I think one thing to get a human life is very rare. You think about it, all those sperms getting out, and you were the one that got there, and that is a real rarity. And then to be able to realize that, oh wait, there's more to life. I'm tired of being bound in my habit patterns. I want to get freed, and to be able to find a teacher to do so, particularly an enlightened teacher, an enlightened master like Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, who has trained so many teachers around the world, 40,000 teachers, 186 countries. That is a real gift. And if you do have that calling, I would just, don't let your mind give you an excuse, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it when I have time. I'll do it when I'm retired. If you have that inkling within you to do something for yourself, just go for it. And get in touch with that once again, so you can also get lit up and live that really inspired life.
Spencer Delisle, thank you so much for truly being a blessing for myself and for the world.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for really being a lighthouse for knowledge and wisdom, for your whole community.
The president of the Art of Living Foundation Canada, Spencer Delisle. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.the-ykm.com.